Queen Helen sat by the wide window of the palace, watching the compound quietly. The sun was soft that morning. Guards moved around. Maids swept the floor. Birds flew across the sky. Everything looked normal, but her heart was not calm. Her only son, Daniel, was of age to marry. He was handsome, kind, and gentle. Many girls wanted him. Rich girls, proud girls, girls who liked the crown more than the man wearing it. Queen Helen had watched them for years. She saw the way some girls smiled when they saw Daniel's car. She saw how their eyes changed when they entered the palace and saw gold, marble, and shining floor. Their love was not real. Their hearts were not deep. She remembered her late husband, the king. He was once a poor teacher before God lifted him. She had loved him when he had nothing. She knew what it meant to love a man and not the crown on his head. Before he died, he held her hand and said, "Please, give Daniel a wife with a clean heart. Not a girl who loves titles. A girl who loves people." Those words stayed with her every day. Sometimes she woke up at night hearing them again. Daniel loved his mother. He was ready to marry. But each time she brought a girl for him to meet, he would sit quietly and later say, "Mother, something is missing. I don't feel peace." Queen Helen understood that feeling. She saw it too. Many of the girls were beautiful outside, but their hearts were cold. They looked down on poor people. They laughed at servants. They liked attention. Daniel needed more than that. One evening, as the sun went down and the sky turned orange, Queen Helen walked alone in the royal garden. Her gown brushed the grass. Her crown felt heavy. Her heart felt heavier. "God," she whispered, "I am a queen, but I am also a mother. Show me my daughter-in-law. Show me a girl who will love my son, not his crown. Show me a girl who will love people, not money." A small wind blew gently on her face. A strange thought entered her heart, simple but strong. If you want to find a heart, the thought seemed to say, go to where hearts are tested. Her eyes slowly widened. She looked at her soft hands. She looked at her fine gown. She looked at the gate of the palace, far ahead. People treated her with respect because she was a queen. They knelt. They bowed. They smiled. No one showed their true character in front of her. No one would insult the weak when a queen was watching. But what if she was not a queen in their eyes? What if she looked like someone poor? Someone dirty? Someone no one respected? Slowly, a strange, bold idea began to form in her mind. It was risky. It was unusual. It was not what queens did, but it felt right. It felt like the only way to see people's real hearts. That night, Queen Helen sat at her dressing table and removed her crown. She looked at her reflection in the mirror. Without the crown, she looked older, smaller, almost like an ordinary woman. She touched her face and whispered to herself, "If I must lose my royal look to find a true daughter, then I will." And that was the beginning of a plan that would change many lives, including the life of a girl named Grace, who at that very moment was crying quietly in a small house far from the palace, with a stepmother who treated her like a slave. The next morning, Queen Helen woke up before the palace cock crowed. The sky was still gray. The maids were not yet moving about. The guards at the gate yawned, half asleep. She opened her wardrobe and looked at her many gowns. None of them fit what she wanted to do. They were too fine, too clean, too royal. She walked to an old chest at the corner of her room. Inside it were clothes from years back, kept away and almost forgotten. She searched until she found a faded skirt and a loose blouse. The colors were dull. The fabric was rough. She held them for a long time, breathing slowly. Then she removed her silk nightwear and put on the old clothes. She wrapped her hair with a torn scarf. Then she went to the mirror. The woman in the mirror did not look like a queen. Her gown was wrinkled. Her scarf sat roughly on her head. Her face was bare without makeup. She looked like any tired, poor woman from the street. To complete it, she took a small bag, filled it with nylon bags and old gloves. She picked a long stick from the garden, the type used to pull trash closer. When she stepped out of her room, her heart beat fast. She felt like she was doing something wrong, even though she was sure her reason was right. In the corridor, one of the older maids saw her and almost screamed, "My queen, what are you wearing?" Queen Helen smiled gently. Today I am not a queen, she said softly. Today I am only a woman. The maid did not understand, but the queen's eyes were calm and serious. Do not tell anyone, Queen Helen added. If anyone asks, say I went to visit the convent. The maid bowed, confused but obedient. At the back gate of the palace, Queen Helen stepped outside quietly. The guard there, who did not look closely, thought she was one of the old workers and did not question her. The streets outside the palace were waking up. Traders pushed their wheelbarrows. Children with torn uniforms hurried to school. Women swept the front of their small houses, pushing out dirt and trash. The air smelled of smoke from early cooking. Queen Helen walked slowly along the road, carrying her bag. Her feet touched dust for the first time in years. People brushed past her without greeting. No one bowed. No one smiled with extra respect. In one compound, a woman sweeping the front looked at her with disgust. Old women in dirty jobs, she muttered loudly. Always moving around rubbish. The word stung a little, but Queen Helen kept walking. She reminded herself why she was doing this. She wanted to see people's true hearts. She wanted to see how they treated someone they thought was nothing. She reached the edge of the market. There, trash lay in small piles. Rotting food, broken plastics, old papers. Flies gathered. People held their noses as they passed. Queen Helen began to work. She bent, picked cans and bottles, dropped them in her bag. Some people stared and shook their heads. A group of young girls passed by, laughing loudly. Their hair was neatly done. Their clothes were neat. One of them pointed at the queen and said, "See how dirty she is. Imagine her smelling like this all day." Another added, "Maybe her children abandoned her. Who would want such a mother?" They laughed again and walked away. The words cut deep, not because they were true, but because they were so careless. But Queen Helen swallowed the pain. If these were the girls who dressed fine and came to the palace, she knew they could never be Daniel's wife. She continued to move from street to street, from corner to corner, watching and listening, waiting quietly for a different kind of heart. A kind voice, a gentle hand. Somewhere ahead, past the market, in a small compound with cracked walls and a rusty gate, a girl named Grace was already sweeping the ground, her thin body moving with tiredness and fear. Grace woke up before the first light reached the window. She did not need an alarm. Her stepmother's voice was louder than any clock. "Grace, are you still sleeping? Do you want me to pour water on you?" Grace jumped up from her thin mattress on the floor. Her body ached. Her eyes felt heavy, but she moved quickly. She tied an old scarf on her head and rushed to the sitting room. Her stepmother, Mrs. Rose, sat on the sofa with her legs crossed, scrolling through her phone. Grace's two younger stepsisters were still asleep in a proper bed inside their room. "Good morning, Ma," Grace said quietly. Mrs. Rose did not answer the greeting. She simply pointed at a long list on the center table. "Sweep the compound, wash the plates, fetch water, wash my clothes, iron the girls' uniforms, and don't let me catch you resting." "Yes, Ma," Grace replied softly. She picked up the broom and went outside. The compound ground was rough and dusty. Old leaves and pieces of paper lay scattered. She began to sweep slowly, pushing the dirt into small heaps. Her hands moved, but her mind was far away. Sometimes she remembered her late father, who used to call her my little sunshine. He had married Rose after Grace's mother died, hoping to give his daughter a family again. But after his sudden death, everything changed. Mrs. Rose took over the house. She locked Grace's room and moved her to the small store. She sold most of Grace's father's things. She told neighbors Grace was just a relative staying with them. Inside the house, Grace had become a servant. As she swept, she heard laughter from inside. Her stepsisters were awake now. They walked out in fine clothes, holding their phones. "Grace, hurry," one shouted. "You will make us late for school." The other one wrinkled her nose. "See how you are sweating? You look like a real slave." They laughed and walked past her without offering to help. Grace kept sweeping, fighting back tears. She was used to these words, but they still hurt. She wanted to go to school. She wanted to read books. She wanted to be treated like a human being, not like dirt. Still, she spoke kindly. "Your uniforms are ironed and on your beds," she said gently. "I will pack your lunch now." They did not even say thank you. After some time, Grace finished sweeping the compound and pushed the small pile of trash to the narrow corner outside the gate where the local trash pickers usually passed. She bent down, tying the nylon bag properly so it would not spill. Her fingers were dusty. Her back hurt, but she worked carefully. She did not like to see dirt scattered on the road. As she straightened up, she noticed an old woman walking slowly along the street with a bag full of trash items and a long stick. The woman's clothes were faded. Her scarf was old. She looked tired, but her eyes were gentle. Grace watched as some children threw a banana peel on the road, right in front of the woman. She bent to pick it without complaining. A man at a nearby shop laughed loudly and said, "Leave it, Mama. That is your work, ABI. Trash picker." The woman smiled humbly and did not answer. She picked the peel and dropped it in her bag. Something in Grace's heart moved. She saw the woman's quiet dignity even in dirt. She saw the way others looked at her, as if she was nothing. Without thinking too much, Grace reached for the nylon bag she had tied and carried it toward the old woman. "Good morning, Ma," Grace said softly. "Please, I kept the trash here so it will be easier for you. Let me help you tie it well." The old woman looked up, surprised by the gentle voice. And for the first time, the Queen and Grace stood face to face. Queen Helen, now looking like a poor trash picker, was not used to anyone speaking to her with respect in that disguise. All morning people had shouted at her, mocked her, or ignored her like she did not exist. But this girl, this thin, tired girl with dust on her clothes and sadness in her eyes, spoke to her softly. "Good morning, Ma," Grace repeated, holding the nylon bag carefully. "Let me help you." Queen Helen's heart warmed. She smiled a little. "Good morning, my daughter," she replied. "Thank you." Grace knelt slightly as she tied the bag again, making sure it would not tear. "I am sorry they dropped dirt everywhere," she said. "I know your work is not easy." The Queen watched her closely. Grace was not pretending. There was no one she was trying to impress. No prince. No camera. Just an old woman and a dirty bag of trash. "What is your name?" Queen Helen asked quietly. "My name is Grace, Ma," the girl answered. "Do you live around here?" The Queen shook her head. "I move from place to place," she said, using a simple voice. "I pick what people throw away, so I can sell small things and eat." Grace's eyes softened with pity. "I am sorry, Ma," she whispered. "Life is hard." Queen Helen tilted her head. "And you, my child? Do you live in that house?" she asked, pointing gently at the compound. Grace nodded slowly. "Yes, Ma." "Is that your mother?" Grace's throat tightened. She hesitated. The truth sat heavy on her chest. "She is my stepmother," she said at last. The Queen did not push further. She could already read pain in the girl's eyes. "You woke up early," Queen Helen said softly. "I saw you sweeping. Your hands are small for such big work." Grace smiled a weak, shy smile. "If I don't do it, no one will," she replied. Just then, Mrs. Rose's voice rang from inside the house. "Grace, where are you? Have you finished with that dirty trash?" Grace flinched. "Yes, Ma. I am coming," she called back. Mrs. Rose stepped out to the gate, her face already twisted in anger. When she saw Grace talking to the trash picker, her eyes narrowed. "What are you doing there?" she snapped. "Are you now making friends with rubbish people?" Grace dropped her gaze. "I was just—" "Keep quiet," Rose shouted. She turned to the Queen and curled her lips. "Mama, carry your things and go. Do not stand in front of my house. You are making the place smell." Queen Helen looked at her calmly. "Good morning, madam," she said politely. Rose hissed. "Good morning for what? Did I send for you? This girl is lazy already. Now you have come to distract her. Grace, go inside now." Grace whispered, "Sorry, Ma," to the Queen, then hurried back into the compound, her shoulders low. Queen Helen watched her go, a deep sadness rising inside her. She had seen many proud people, but something about this stepmother's voice felt especially cold. There was no love in it, no care, only control. The Queen turned and walked away slowly, but her mind stayed in that compound. She had seen something precious in Grace's small kindness, a heart that respected even someone that others called trash. As she moved down the street, she whispered to herself, "This girl, Grace, her name fits her. She decided she would return to that street again. She wanted to know more. She wanted to see if this kindness was only for one day, or if it was part of who Grace really was. That afternoon, as Grace washed a big pile of plates and tried to hide the tears running down her cheeks, she remembered the old woman's gentle eyes. She did not know that the old woman was thinking about her too, from a quiet corner of the market with a royal heart hidden under a dirty scarf. The next day, Queen Helen wore the same faded clothes and tied the same old scarf. She left the palace again through the back gate, her heart already pulling her toward the street where Grace lived. She reached the compound quietly. Grace was outside, bending over a large basin of cloves. Soap foam covered her hands. Water splashed on her long skirt. "Good morning, my daughter," the queen greeted from the gate. Grace looked up quickly. When she saw the old woman, her face brightened with a small, honest smile. "Good morning, Ma," she said. "You are here again." That smile told the queen everything. It was not a one-time kindness. It was part of who Grace was. "How was your work today?" Queen Helen asked. Grace laughed a little in a tired way. "The work is much," she answered, "but God will help me." Before they could talk more, Mrs. Rose walked out again, holding a cup of tea. She frowned immediately. "You again," she said to the queen. "Mama, is there no other place for you to carry your dirty bag?" Queen Helen bowed her head slightly. "I am sorry, madam. I only came to greet the girl." Rose scoffed. "For what? Is she your mate? She is a nobody, a liability." She turned to Grace. "If I see you with this woman again, you will sleep outside tonight. Do you hear me?" Grace's chest tightened with fear. "Yes, Ma," she whispered. Queen Helen watched silently, pain heavy in her heart. She could not show anger. Not yet. She needed to see more. Later that week, she decided to test Grace's heart again. On a hot afternoon, Queen Helen went back to the same street. This time she walked slower than usual. When she reached the front of the compound, she pretended to feel dizzy. Her legs shook. She dropped her bag and leaned on the gate, breathing heavily. Inside the compound, Grace was washing the veranda. She heard something fall outside and rushed to the gate. She found the old woman on her knees, head bent, breathing hard. "Ma," Grace cried. "Are you okay?" Queen Helen groaned softly, playing her part. "My head, my chest." Without thinking of anything else, Grace left her broom and ran to her side. She put one arm around the old woman's back and tried to help her sit properly. "Please, come inside and rest," Grace said. "The sun is too hot. You cannot stay out here like this." Queen Helen's heart almost broke. Grace knew her stepmother would be angry. Still, she wanted to bring the trash picker inside the compound to rest. Before they could move, Mrs. Rose stormed out again. "What is going on here?" she shouted. When she saw Grace holding the old woman, she exploded with anger. "Have you gone mad, Grace? I warned you." Grace swallowed hard. "Ma, she is not feeling well," she explained. "Please, let her sit inside for a while." "The sun." Rose slapped the broom out of Grace's hand. "Are you stupid? This is my house, not a refugee camp. Let her go and die where she came from." The words were sharp like knives. Queen Helen felt tears sting her eyes, not for herself, but for Grace. Grace turned to her stepmother, voice shaking. "Ma, please," she begged softly. "Just 10 minutes. She can sit by the corner. I will still finish all my work." Rose stepped closer to Grace, her eyes full of wicked fire. "If that dirty woman crosses this gate, you will not eat food in this house today. In fact, I will throw your mattress outside. You will sleep by the dustbin with her." Grace froze. Fear wrapped her like a chain. She looked at the old woman's tired face. Then she looked at the house behind her, the only shelter she had. Slowly, she helped the queen sit properly on the ground outside the gate, under a small shade. "I am sorry, Ma," she whispered, her voice breaking. "She will not allow you to enter. But I will bring water." She ran inside, filled a cup with clean water, and carried it back to the queen, her hands trembling. "Please drink," Grace said. "I am so sorry. I wish I could do more." The queen accepted the water, her heart full. In that moment, she saw the full picture. A girl under oppression, still choosing kindness, still trying to help a stranger even when it cost her comfort. Queen Helen knew, deep in her spirit, that this was the heart she had been searching for. As Grace went back to her chores, wiping tears with the back of her hand, the queen watched her and made a silent promise. "I will not leave you in this house," she whispered. "Even if I must fight with my crown, I will bring you out." That evening, Queen Helen returned to the palace, tired in body, but very awake in her heart. She took off the old clothes, washed the dust from her hands, and put on her royal gown again. When she placed the crown on her head, she stared at herself in the mirror. The same woman who had been insulted on the street now looked powerful and respected again. But her heart remembered clearly the girl kneeling by the gate, offering water with shaking hands. During dinner, Prince Daniel noticed his mother's calm but serious face. "Mother," he said gently, "is something on your mind?" She smiled a little. "Something is always on a mother's mind," she replied. "But yes, this time it is about you." Daniel set down his fork. "I am listening." Queen Helen looked at her son carefully. "If you meet a girl who has nothing," she asked slowly, "no fine clothes, no rich family, no title, but a clean, kind heart, would you be willing to marry someone like that?" Daniel's answer was simple and steady. "Yes, mother," he said without thinking twice. "That is the kind of wife I've been praying for." Her heart rested more. She nodded. "Then I believe God has started answering us." The next day, Queen Helen sent one of her trusted guards, dressed in simple clothes, to Grace's neighborhood. She gave him clear instructions. "Do not wear the palace uniform," she told him. "Do not mention me. Tell the stepmother that there is a rich woman in the city who needs a hard-working girl to help in her big house. Say the girl will be paid and will live better there." The guard went as instructed. When Mrs. Rose heard there was a rich woman looking for a house help, her eyes shone with greedy interest. She did not care about Grace's feelings. She cared about money and the chance to connect with rich people. Grace stood by the door, her heart beating as the guard spoke. "The madam is kind," he said. "She will take good care of the girl. Food is sure. The house is big and clean. The girl will have her own small room." Mrs. Rose did not ask about the girl's safety or if she wanted to go. She quickly agreed. "Take her," she said. "She is useless here anyway. Maybe she will be useful to someone else." Grace's chest tightened. She wanted to escape the slave life here, but she was also afraid of going to a strange house. Still, something inside her whispered, this might be your way out. "Pack your things," Rose ordered her. "Do not delay this man. Opportunities do not wait." Grace hurried to the small store she called her room. She did not have much. A few old clothes, a small Bible that once belonged to her mother, a faded photo of her father. She packed them into a nylon bag and held it close. She stepped out to the yard. Mrs. Rose looked at her with no softness at all. "If you misbehave there, do not come back here," she warned. "I did not send you to disgrace me." Grace nodded, biting her lips to hold back tears. "Yes, Ma," she replied. The guard led her out of the gate and down the road. Grace did not look back. She had nothing to look back at. They walked until they reached the main road, where a black car waited. Grace's eyes widened. She had never entered such a car in her life. "Enter," the guard said kindly. She climbed in slowly, her heart pounding. As the car moved through the city, she stared at the buildings, the lights, the wide roads. Fear sat beside hope inside her chest. "God," she prayed silently, "please let this woman be kind. Please let this not be another house of suffering." The car turned into a long, quiet street lined with trees. At the end stood a large, beautiful mansion with tall gates and shining windows. Grace swallowed hard. "Is this the house?" she asked, her voice shaking. "Yes," the guard replied. "This is where you will work." Grace had no idea that the rich woman waiting inside was not just rich, but a queen. The palace gate opened slowly and the car drove in. Grace pressed her small nylon bag against her chest, her eyes wide. The compound was large and clean. Flowers lined the path. The walls shone in the late afternoon sun. She had never seen such beauty up close. The car stopped near the main entrance. The guard stepped out first, then opened the door for her. "Come," he said gently. Grace climbed out carefully, afraid to stain anything. The air smelled of flowers and polish. She could hear soft footsteps from inside, quiet and ordered. A maid appeared at the top of the steps. She wore a neat uniform and a warm smile. "You must be Grace," she said. "Yes, Ma," Grace answered softly. "Welcome," the maid replied. "Our madam is waiting to see you." Grace's heart beat fast. She adjusted her scarf and followed the maid into the building. The floors were smooth like glass. The walls carried paintings. Everything looked too bright for a girl who came from dust. They entered a sitting room. It was spacious and simple, not crowded with things, but every item looked carefully chosen. On a soft chair in the center sat Queen Helen, dressed in a modest but fine gown, her crown placed lightly on her head. Grace froze. She had never been this close to royalty. Her knees bent by themselves. She went straight to the floor. "Good afternoon, my queen," she whispered, shaking. Queen Helen smiled softly. Her voice was gentle, the same way it had been at the gate, only clearer now. "Stand up, my child," she said. "What is your name?" Grace rose slowly, her head still bowed. "Grace, my queen." The queen took a long look at her. She saw the tiredness in her eyes, the humility in the way she stood, the scars on her hands from too much work. "How old are you, Grace?" she asked. "I am 25, my queen," she replied. "Have you ever worked in another house?" Grace swallowed. "No, my queen. Only in my stepmother's house." The queen's eyes softened. "Sit," she said, pointing to a small chair. Grace hesitated. "My queen, I cannot." "I said sit," the queen repeated, still gentle. "You are safe here." Slowly, Grace sat at the edge of the chair, her fingers twisting the edge of her scarf. Queen Helen leaned forward. "I have heard that you are hard-working," she said. "I also know that life has not been fair to you." Grace's eyes filled with tears quickly, though she tried to hold them back. I just try my best, my queen," she whispered. The queen nodded. "In this house," she said slowly, "you will work, yes, but you will also rest. You will eat well. You will have your own room." And she paused, looking into Grace's eyes. "You will be treated like a human being." The words entered Grace's heart like warm light. Her lips trembled. "Thank you, my queen," she managed to say. Just then, a door at the far end opened. Footsteps approached. A young man walked into the sitting room, tall and calm, wearing a simple shirt and trousers. His presence was gentle, but strong. It was Prince Daniel. "Mother," he greeted. Then his eyes fell on Grace. She quickly looked down, not daring to meet his gaze. "Daniel," Queen Helen said with a small smile, "this is Grace. She will be staying with us from today." Daniel studied the girl quietly. He noticed how she kept her eyes low, how her shoulders were slightly bent like she was used to being shouted at. He also noticed the quiet strength in the way she controlled her tears. "Welcome, Grace," he said kindly. "You are safe here." The simple words made Grace look up for a brief moment. Their eyes met. Something soft and unknown passed between them. Not love yet, but a small, quiet recognition. "Thank you, sir," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Queen Helen watched them, her heart calm. She did not speak of marriage. Not yet. She would not rush. She wanted their hearts to see each other slowly, naturally, the way real feelings grow. "Grace," the queen said, "go with Mary, the maid. She will show you your room and the kitchen. Rest a little. Your new life starts today." Grace stood and bowed. "Thank you, my queen," she said again, tears now rolling openly down her cheeks. As she followed Mary out of the room, Prince Daniel turned to his mother. "There is something different about her," he said softly. Queen Helen smiled, her eyes shining with quiet joy. "Yes," she replied, "there is." Days turned into weeks, and the palace slowly became home for Grace. At first, she walked like a shadow, afraid to touch things, afraid to make mistakes. She woke early, helped in the kitchen, cleaned, and served with quiet care. But unlike in her stepmother's house, no one shouted at her for every small thing. If she dropped a spoon, Mary would laugh gently and say, "Relax, Grace. It happens." If she looked tired, the cook would give her an extra piece of bread and tell her to sit for a few minutes. Slowly, the fear inside her began to melt. Prince Daniel often passed through the kitchen to greet the workers. He treated everyone with respect, from the cook to the cleaner. Whenever he saw Grace, he would smile and ask, "How are you today?" The first few times, she only nodded quickly. But one day, she gathered courage and answered, "I am fine, sir." "Thank you." He noticed how her face brightened when she talked about simple things, like the smell of bread in the morning or the sound of rain at night. He noticed she was grateful for very little, even a kind word. One afternoon, Queen Helen called Grace to the garden. The air was cool. Birds hopped on the grass. The queen sat on a bench, her gown simple, her crown aside. "Sit with me," she said. Grace sat on the edge, confused. "My queen, have I done something wrong?" she asked carefully. The queen shook her head. "No, my child. You have done everything right." She watched Grace for a long moment, then spoke slowly. "I want to tell you something today. But before I do, answer me honestly. Are you happy here?" Grace nodded quickly, tears already gathering. "Yes, my queen," she said. "This is the first place in my life where I am not treated like a curse." The queen's heart squeezed. "Did your stepmother call you a curse?" Grace looked down. "Many times," she whispered. "She said my mother brought bad luck. She said my father wasted his life loving me." Queen Helen reached out and gently held Grace's hand. "Listen to me," she said firmly. "You are not a curse. You are not a burden. You are a blessing God hid in a rough place." Grace's tears flowed freely now. "Thank you, my queen," she sobbed. The queen waited until her tears softened, then took a deep breath. "Grace," she began, "remember the old trash picker you helped at your gate?" Grace froze. Her heart jumped. "Yes, my queen," she replied slowly. "She was very kind. I still think about her." Queen Helen smiled gently. "Look at me well," she said. Grace raised her eyes, confused. The queen's face, without the heavy makeup, had the same lines, the same eyes, the same gentle mouth as the old woman she had seen in the street. It hit her all at once. Her eyes widened. "My queen," she whispered, shocked. "You?" "Yes," Queen Helen said softly. "I was the trash picker." Grace covered her mouth with both hands, her body shaking. She stood up, then knelt in front of the queen. "My queen, I didn't know." The queen touched her shoulder lightly. "Stand, my child," she said. "You did not treat me well because you knew I was a queen. You treated me well because your heart is good." Grace stood again, still trembling. "I came to the street in disguise," the queen continued, "because I wanted to see people's true hearts. Your stepmother's heart was full of pride. But you, even with fear, even with hunger, you still chose kindness." Grace's tears did not stop. "I only did what I thought was right," she whispered. "And that," the queen said, "is why you are here." Just then, Prince Daniel walked into the garden, called by his mother earlier. He stopped when he saw Grace's wet face and the queen's serious expression. "Mother," he asked. "Daniel," Queen Helen said softly, "this is the girl I told you about. The one who showed me true kindness when the world saw only trash. I brought her here not just as a worker, but as someone I believe can stand by your side." Daniel's heart beat faster. He looked at Grace, really looked at her. He saw the shock, the humility, the deep heart that pain had not destroyed. He walked closer, his voice gentle. "Grace," he said, "I do not know you fully yet, but I see your heart, and I trust my mother's eyes." Grace could hardly breathe. "My prince," Queen Helen smiled through her own tears. "I am not forcing you both," she said. "Love must grow by itself, but I want you to know, Grace, that in this palace, you are more than a servant. You are my answered prayer." The wind moved softly through the garden, carrying away the dust of Grace's old life. Far away, in a small compound, Mrs. Rose did not know that the girl she once called a nobody was standing in a palace garden, being called blessing by a queen. The morning came slowly, like it knew the day was special. The palace was not quiet that day. Drums sounded softly in the distance. Voices moved around the compound. Flowers were being arranged. Chairs were being wiped again and again, even when they were already clean. Inside her room, Grace sat in front of a big mirror, but she hardly recognized herself. Her hair was packed neatly, with tiny shining beads resting softly on it. Her dress was simple but royal, pure and clean, white at the top and gold at the bottom, flowing around her like calm water. Her hands shook a little as the maid adjusted her veil. "You look beautiful," Mary whispered, smiling. Grace tried to smile back, but her eyes were already wet. "Is this really me?" she asked in a low voice. Mary laughed softly. "Yes, this is the same Grace that used to wash plates with tears in her eyes. Only now, God has wiped the tears. Grace looked at herself again. There were no wounds on her body now, but her heart remembered. She remembered the small store she slept in. She remembered her stepmother's voice calling her a curse. She remembered tying trash in front of the compound, just trying to be kind to an old woman. And now that same old woman had become Mother Queen to her. There was a small knock on the door. Queen Helen entered, dressed in soft royal colors, not with her full crown yet, but with a calm, deep joy in her eyes. When she saw Grace, she paused. Her eyes glistened immediately. "My child," she said quietly, "you look like an answer." Grace stood up quickly, holding her dress. "Mother," she whispered, "thank you for seeing me when nobody saw me." The queen walked closer and gently took her hands. "I did not see you first," she said. "God did. I only followed him." They both laughed softly through their tears. From the far part of the palace, a horn sounded. It was time. Today was not just a wedding. It was also the coronation of a new king. The old king was gone. The throne could not stay empty. The elders had chosen the day carefully. The same day, Daniel would take the crown. He would also take a wife. The kingdom wanted to see their king and queen stand together. In the great hall, people were already seated. Royal elders wore their long robes. Important guests filled the chairs. The air smelled of perfume and flowers. A red carpet led straight to the front, where a golden but simple throne stood, beside a slightly smaller one. Prince Daniel stood near the front, dressed in royal clothes, but his face was still the same kind one Grace had first met in the sitting room. His heart beat quickly. He was about to become king. But more than that, he was about to marry the girl whose tears had touched his mother's heart. The drum slowed. The hall grew quiet. Doors at the back opened. Grace stepped in. She walked slowly, one step at a time. Her eyes were soft, shining. She did not look at the crowd. She kept her eyes on Daniel, who was already smiling, unable to hide it. Every step forward took her farther away from the life of a slave. Every step said, quietly, "I survived. I did not die there." Queen Helen watched her, her heart full. She remembered Grace kneeling by the gate with a nylon of trash. She remembered the fear in her eyes when her stepmother shouted. She remembered the cup of water Grace had offered her, not knowing she was a queen. Now everyone knew. The priest spoke softly, blessing the union. Daniel and Grace joined hands. "Do you, Daniel, take Grace to be your wife? To stand by her, protect her, and love her all the days of your life?" Daniel's voice was firm. "I do." "Do you, Grace, take Daniel to be your husband? To stand by him, respect him, and walk with him as king and man all the days of your life?" Grace swallowed, her voice shaking but clear. "I do." They exchanged rings. The hall clapped gently. Then the priest stepped aside as the chief elder came forward with a small, covered tray. On it lay the royal crown. Daniel knelt. The elder lifted the crown and placed it carefully on his head. "I present to you," he said, "our new king." The hall roared with joy. Drums beat louder. Voices rose. Then the queen's crown was brought forward. Grace's hand shook again. Queen Helen walked close and took the crown herself. Her voice was soft but strong. "You were once called a nobody," she said quietly. Only Grace and a few near could hear. "Now, I place this crown on you as my daughter and as queen." She placed it gently on Grace's head. The elder lifted his staff. "Here stands Grace," he announced, "wife of our king, queen of this land." The people rose and clapped again. Some had tears in their eyes. Far away, in the small compound with cracked walls, Mrs. Rose sat in front of a neighbor's television. She had gone there out of curiosity, after hearing that the prince's wedding would be shown live. Her stepsisters, Clara and Bella, sat beside her eating snacks. They watched the hall, the king, the elders, and then the camera moved and landed on the new queen's face. The snacks fell from Clara's hand. Bella dropped her cup. Rose's mouth opened slowly. Her eyes grew wide. That is, Grace," she whispered, her voice lost. The girls leaned forward. "It cannot be," Clara said quickly. "It just looks like her." But it was her. The same Grace they called slave. The same Grace they sent away without a bag of food. The same Grace they said was nothing. Now she was walking beside a king. Now people stood up when she passed. Jealousy rose hot and bitter in Rose's chest. She tricked us, she snapped suddenly, anger covering her shock. She must have planned this. She went there to look for rich people. Useless girl. But her voice shook. There was fear in it. And something deeper, regret she refused to name. Clara's eyes burned. So she is now higher than us, she said. Our own house girl is now a queen. Bella's chest felt tight. Her eyes were glassy. She used to sweep in front of this house, she whispered. On the screen, Grace smiled gently, holding Daniel's hand as they waved. She did not know who was watching. She did not know what her stepmother was feeling. She only knew that pain had not killed her. Back in the hall, as the drums beat and the people shouted, Daniel leaned close to his new wife and whispered, "Are you okay?" Grace nodded slowly, her eyes full. "Yes," she said. "I am more than okay." Queen Helen stood a little behind them, her heart finally resting. She had done what she promised her late husband. She had found a wife with a clean heart. A queen had once pretended to be a trash picker. A slave girl had once tied a nylon at the gate. Now, both stood in the same light. Mother, son, daughter, king, queen, and somewhere far away, jealousy and anger burned in a small, dusty house. While in the palace, Grace and Destiny sat quietly on a throne, refusing to bow to the past ever again.